Hi, everybody. Welcome back. This is day 4 of the 7 days of Halloween. And I don't think we have too many intros. If you want to submit your own story to potentially be read on this channel, instructions are always down below in the description. Also, please subscribe because this is all we do here. It's kind of like my podcast channel. Please subscribe and don't forget to like the video. It helps me out a lot. Okay, let's get right into it. The first story for today starts... Hi, my name is Augustine, probably Augustine, and I've had some short, scary stories for a long time. For some context, I'm really into all things spooky, but I'm not an avid believer. But I have had some experiences that make me question things. I have 2 stories that are both fairly short, and one includes a photo that I took that may show a ghost of sorts. I will tell them in chronological order below. When I was a little kid, 7 or 8 I think, I lived in California, and while visiting San Diego, my family and I decided to go on a ghost tour of the Whaley House. While doing the tour, I wasn't really afraid because the house was only scary in the way all old things are scary. I was disappointed that I wasn't actively being chased by ghosts or hearing things the whole time. Once the tour was over, my parents went to the gift shop area and my brother went outside. I got bored and asked my parents if I could go with him, and they said yes. While I was walking outside, I was alone at the wide entrance, which I remember because I've been paranoid about being kidnapped for forever, and I would have remembered if there were other people near me. Right before I stepped outside the door, I felt a small, furry thing brush past my leg. I got scared, assuming that it was a squirrel or something that could bite me, but when I looked down, it was nothing, not a single animal near me. I was wearing shorts, so the feeling was incredibly noticeable. After that, I simply walked outside, told my brother, who was already incredibly scared, and didn't think much of it. Even smaller story inside the story, at the same time this happened, my mom said she felt someone grip/tug on her arm in the gift shop. The weirdest part is, after this, I watched a video about the house, and apparently people say that there's a ghost dog and cat in there. I got a little freaked out because that could have been what I felt, but that's also super cute. Aww! I hope I get haunted by a ghost dog or a cat dog. I love that. Second story. This one takes place a few years ago after the last story, but in the same area. I went on a full ghost tour with my parents again, but without my brother because he hates all the scary stuff. This time we got to go to a different place, the Cosmopolitan Hotel. I had never been there and I didn't even know it existed, but it was pretty cool. I'm actually going to stay there for my birthday later this year, so if anything happens next time, I might write about that. When we were inside, the tour guide shows us images people had taken of shadowy figures in the mirrors, doorways, and all sorts of ghost sighting areas. My dad and I went off to go take photos in all the mirrors, hoping to find a ghost. And I think I did. I blocked out me and my dad's faces so that the photo is okay to show if you do read this story. I will also describe the photos a bit just to explain what goes on in them, because for some reason the entire place was green, every light was off, and the furniture was everywhere. I will show you the photo in just a second. Let's let them cook. So the first photo shows me standing alone taking a photo of the mirror. Then there's a painting on the wall beside me, which will be important. The second photo was taken a little while after. I can't remember if it was the same moment or if I came back later. This time my dad is next to me and something else is too, on the other side below the painting. At first it was hard to tell if the shadow was a part of the painting, but the first photo shows that it's not. It could have been my dad's shadow since it only showed up when he was in the photo with me, but it just doesn't look like his shadow, and the painting was all the way on the wall behind us. It also partially obstructs the other objects, which shadows don't normally do. It could have been a blur on the camera as well, since I think that I was using iPhone's night mode, which is what messes up photos a lot. I think about this quite often, as you can tell. I'm open to hearing what you think it might have been because I'm out of explanations for myself. But anyway, I hope you liked my stories, even though they aren't that scary on their own. I think they're more fun than spooky, but I just wanted a reason to tell them. Thank you for your time. Love your videos. I disagree. I think that those are very spooky story. I think the second one especially, because I saw these pictures before I added this story, and yeah, I am thoroughly spooked. So let's look at these pictures. So here's the first picture without anything in it. As you can see, the room is green, just the way the storyteller told us. So everybody look on the left, on the striped wall on the left, there's that painting right there. And you could see that this is a picture of somebody taking a picture of a mirror. I'll have Taylor, if you could put an arrow right there of where we're looking at. Okay, so now look at this next picture. What the fuck? What the fuck? I know for a fact that is not your dad's shadow. There's no way. That is not your dad's shadow. I don't know what that is. The only logical explanation I can think of is like somebody else was in the room and walked by, but that I just don't, it's not near any, I don't see how that could be somebody else's shadow. I don't like this at all. This really, really creeps me out. Maybe it's the angle that the picture's taken, because the other thing I noticed is that the first picture is zoomed out and you could see the frame of the mirror. And then the second picture is more zoomed in. So I do kind of wonder if the angle is making the bottom of the painting blend in more with the background and with the angle of the mirror, like the bottom of the mirror. But you could see in the second picture, the frame of the mirror is like a little bit lighter. You could see where it's different from the figure. And that looks like a fucking figure. Yeah, dude, I don't know. I'm going to go with ghost on this one. That's haunted. That is so creepy. If I took that picture, I'd be like, I caught a shadow person on camera or a ghost on camera. I don't know. But yeah, that is... You said you went to the Cosmopolitan Hotel, so never mind. Everybody, we got to go there. I got to go there and check that out because, thank you so much for your story, Augustin. And I really hope I'm saying your name wrong. And I'm very sorry if I'm not. Everybody sound off in the comments. Let us know what you think. I'm sure they would be fine with a logical explanation, or if you guys think that's a pretty damn creepy picture. So, okay, moving on to story number 2. Now, as I told you guys, I try to give everybody an equal chance of being picked. I don't just pick new stories. I don't just start at the beginning and pick old stories. I kind of play roulette in my scary stories inbox and scroll to random places in time where I've gotten stories and select from that section, so that everybody has a pretty equal chance of getting picked. And for this one, I decided I was going to go all the way back to the beginning and pick a couple stories some of the first stories that people sent me. So this is one of the first stories that anybody ever sent me after announcing that I was going to do this series. So to the storyteller, I do apologize that you sent this probably in 2023, I think. And I am just getting to it now. I really hope maybe you're still here and will listen though. So, okay. Hi, Hannah. Here's my retelling of my one and only paranormal experience that I've had in my life so far. I'd love to get your opinion on it, especially if it reminds you of any story you've heard during your topic research. For background, I'm a horror-enjoying skeptic from a superstitious but equally skeptical family. We live in a busy-ish neighborhood with no known history of horrible incidents. About 2 years ago, I woke up around 3 a.m. due to thirst. The rest of my family was asleep in their rooms at the time, so I quietly went downstairs for water and a snack. When I finished, I went back upstairs along with my cats, who followed me up once they heard that I was awake. As my cats were lounging in my bedroom, I left the door open so that they could leave when they wanted. I wasn't really sleepy, so I put one of my earbuds in and decided to watch a few YouTube videos to get sleepy. After a video or two, I noticed a weird sound that didn't seem to be coming from the video that I was watching. I paused the video, took out the earbud from my ear, and I listened carefully for the sound. To my horror, it sounded like a woman was softly crying in my pitch black house. It seemed like it was coming from the front doorway, which, because of my house's odd layout, is only 4 to 5 meters from my room. When I fully processed the sound, I went into a silent panic, lying down in bed with the covers pulled up, staring at the gap left by my open door as I held my breath to listen to the crying better. To better describe the crying, it sounded like a woman's voice, with the crying being quite soft. Also, while it was quiet, the quality of the sound was very clear, as if a high-quality recording of a crying woman was playing in my house at a low volume. I can't remember when the crying stopped, but I was so anxious to what it could have been that I stayed in that position for an hour before having the courage to reach for my phone. Seeing that it was nearly 5 a.m. and that I wouldn't be able to sleep after that experience, I decided once dawn hit, I would go downstairs and make cinnamon rolls for breakfast to make me feel better. When I did go downstairs, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. My cats were still a bit confused as to why I was awake for so long, but otherwise had good vibes. I made the cinnamon rolls and my family was surprised with fresh pastry for breakfast, while I was sleep deprived and freaked out beyond imagination. Now, I know for a fact that this sound was not from my mom, and I don't have any sisters. No TVs were on in the house at the time. We have a tenant who rents our basement, but he doesn't have a girlfriend, and if the TV is on in his space, we can only hear it in our family room. I was not having sleep paralysis, as I've experienced it before, and this felt nothing like that. I have never had an auditory hallucination, and none of the medications I take have hallucinations as a possible side effect. I was also 100% sober at the time. Taking all of this into consideration, the only explanation I can't rule out is that my elderly neighbors were awake at the time, since their age group don't need as much sleep, and the wife was crying. The sound then traveled through my brother's window, and it faces their house and echoed in through the rest of the house. I realize that all of that coming together is very unlikely, but I'm out of logical explanations for what happened that night. An internet friend told me a story that reminded him of shadow people, but I find their existence less plausible than ghosts. Thank you for reading through my experience. Hopefully it was clear enough to get a layout of the variables at play. And that was from Anonymous, I believe. Thank you so much for your story. Interesting. Like you said, if it was the elderly neighbors who their windows were open and they were crying, I could see that maybe because it's like an acoustics thing. Sometimes in a room you can hear something more clearly. You know, it's an architectural thing. I'm not an architect, but you get it. And you could hear things more clearly in weird random rooms than you can in other rooms. Sometimes even when you're further away, you can hear things clearly than when you're closer to them. So it could be something like that. The only thing I don't really get is how creepy it sounded. It sounded like you made it sound like it was somebody weeping, not somebody just like actually crying. It sounded like somebody scorned and sad. So if that was it, I don't know. That would be that seems almost less likely than a ghost to me. Maybe if do you have a crawl space or something that somebody could have left? I mean, this is so crazy. Like, this also doesn't make any sense. I don't think that this is it. But like, again, if we're just going off of the most wacky possible explanations that are worldly, somebody who lived there prior, did they put a tape recorder up in the crawl space and it went off and it was the recording of somebody crying? But that just obviously doesn't make much sense. Like, that makes less sense than a ghost. Somebody had probably gone up in the attic and seen if something like that was up there by then, and then it would have happened again. So that doesn't make a lot of sense. Maybe somebody was walking, again, I don't know what kind of neighborhood you live in, but if your window was open, or even if it wasn't, maybe somebody who was having trouble was walking by, or they stopped nearby your house or by your window and they were crying, but they sat next to your house for some reason. Maybe they were high or drunk, and so they sat kind of against your house, so when you looked out the window you couldn't see anything and then you couldn't hear it. Like, maybe something like that, if you want to feel any better about it. Again, and also, since you've never experienced anything else that you talked about anyway, or you didn't mention hearing or seeing other stuff in that house, that's also why I'm more inclined to believe there's got to be a logical explanation that we just don't know. Okay, moving along. The next story for today starts, "Hi Hannah, my name is Halo. No worries about censoring it. I'm looking forward to freaking out when I suddenly hear my name in a video. Hi Halo, thanks for submitting. I've been obsessed with your channel since the Evil Stick video." That's crazy. Y'all, that was when I was making like 10-minute silly little videos. Okay, I have two stories. One is very long and not paranormal, and the other is much shorter and is the one that I can't figure out the explanation for. Let me set the scene of the first story. I was 15 and living with my family, my mom, my stepdad, and my older brother. My parents are on a business trip in Chicago, and my brother is visiting a friend in New York. I've been home alone for a day or so already, and I've still got 3 days before my parents come back. Even at my big age, I still get really bad paranoia and anxiety when I'm alone. I hear a creak of the house settling, I've got 911 dialed. Unfortunately, that instinct didn't pull through during the first story. My bedroom is upstairs, but since I get paranoid, I like to spend most of my time downstairs in the living room when I'm home alone, just so I can know what's going on down there. The door that leads out to our deck and backyard is on the far right corner of the living room, and there are two of them. A thicker one on the inside that opens up to the full glass one on the outside. The thicker one inside has a big glass window in the middle, and in between the two panes of glass, there's blinds that you can control with a knob. Open them up fully, close them completely, put them down or up. When these blinds are fully closed, you can still see light coming through. They're translucent. It's something like 10:30 p.m. and I'm sitting on the couch happily eating soup and watching Lord of the Rings. Nothing scary here. I'm not anxious at all. But then I hear police sirens, loud ones, and then honking like a car alarm has been triggered. The honking goes on for a few seconds, stops, then the sirens start for a second, stop, and the honking starts again, over and over. It scares the shit out of me at first, and I think that maybe the police car is malfunctioning. I start hearing shouting over a megaphone. It's an officer yelling for someone to come out with your hands up, exit the house. All of this sounds very close to my house. My backyard is a half acre lined by several other houses in a sort of triangle. Since my back porch light is on, the blinds on my back door are translucent, and I have a perfect view of the door from my cozy spot on the couch. All of a sudden, closer than the megaphones, I hear a thud and footsteps creaking on the wood of my deck. And then through the translucent blinds, I see the silhouette of a person standing on the back at the back door. Oh my God, I would have peed my pants. Well, I immediately burst into tears. I could see the man just standing for a second, turning his head every which way before he starts knocking, lightly at first. And then when I obviously don't answer, he starts pounding on the door. Like, I just know his knuckles hurt from how hard he was knocking. I think he must have known someone was home since the porch light was on and so was the Christmas tree in the living room. I was too scared to even dream of moving, so when nobody lets him in, he starts rattling the handle of the outside of the door and pulling it back and forth as if it would open that way. Obviously it didn't. It was locked. Thank God. I'm 5'0". You're 5 feet tall, 94-pound cis teenage girl. So even if this grown man didn't have any bad intent towards me in particular, I was so fucking scared. He keeps rattling the door and banging on the window. It was probably only 2 minutes at most, but in the moment, it felt like hours. Then I hear more footsteps, loud shouting from police officers. The man stops and turns around, and then he runs out of view of the door. I don't get up to go look until after the police have tased him and brought him back across my backyard to one of their cop cars. Not you just being in the middle of a police chase. Oh my God. The police in my backyard for a little while. I peek out in an attempt to be brave and talk to them, but I'm bawling my eyes out too much to talk. I'm still sobbing by the time they leave. The man was arrested on several charges, most of which I can't remember, but they were something like illegal drug possession, aggravated assault, and resisting arrest and whatnot. I found out most of the story later when my parents came home early for me and talked to my neighbors. This guy was doing something illegal in the house that he rented, which was directly across from my backyard. I heard rumors of a meth lab maybe, but I'm not sure. The police showed up and ordered him out of the house, but he refused to come out. I'm pretty sure that they had a warrant for his arrest or like probable cause or something. He wouldn't leave his house, so it turned into a SWAT standoff. Like SWAT cars pulled into his front yard and shot tear gas into his windows. At some point, he had to jump out of the back window and sprinted across to my backyard. I guess that he thought one of his neighbors, who didn't know him at all since he was just renting the house and hadn't been there long, unfortunately me, would let him in and help him hide from the cops. Pictures of the damage done to that rental house are attached below. The holes that you can see in the windows are from the tear gas they shot. Oh my God. We'll put the pictures up here. That's so wow. Talk about wrong place at the wrong time for you to be sitting there. I would have cried my eyes out just like you did. And what the hell was he thinking, that he thought that somebody hears police And then some creepy man is banging on their back door and tries to get in, and he thinks that they'll just let him in, that they'll just be like, oh, sorry, sure. Yeah, you could just come in and then risk getting in trouble themselves. Wow. Thank you. That's an intense story. Yeah. Okay, so the second story happened like literally last month. It's early in the morning during my summer break just before junior year, and I'm sitting on the living room couch with my book and my cup of coffee. My mom is in the library a couple rooms over starting work. It's just the two of us at home, and we have the same back door closed. I made the mistake of simply just glancing up at the door, and what do I see? Fucking handprints. Like when the glass has condensation on it and you draw a little smiley face with your finger on the window. I sat there and stared at them for a while, and then I got up and ran to my mom to show her. I had been hoping that she'd have an explanation for them, but she was just as freaked the hell out as I was. We took pictures that are attached, you'll know them when you see them, and opened up the inner door. My mom tries to wipe them away, but we realize they're on the outside, like the outside of the outer door. Here's pictures of it. We'll put up here. My mom says hell no and goes out to the deck to wipe them off. She refuses to investigate any further, and we both try to forget about it. I am skeptical, but if anything strange ever happens in my home, my mind goes straight to intruder. Oh my God, someone's trying to kill me. Not, it must be a ghost. But oh my God, these handprints make me want it to be a ghost. They scare me so bad. I had posted the pictures to TikTok to show my friends, and a couple people suggested that they were raccoon paw prints since they were so low to the ground. But we don't have raccoons in my area, and I don't know how big raccoon paws can get, but those handprints were the size of adult human hands with long, thin fingers. It looked more to me like somebody had crouched down rather than actually being that short. My running theory is that maybe they're really old and someone was out, had something on their hand, and crouched down to put their hands on the door to play with the cats or something. And we didn't find any clear or new footprints around the deck, so at least there's that. We live in a pretty safe, nice neighborhood, other than the guy cooking meth in your backyard. Other than that, you mean? So I think that they're probably nothing sinister. Still terrifying. Thank you for reading. Sorry that this was so long, but I hope it was entertaining or interesting for everyone because, oh boy, it was not for me. Okay, yeah, I can see where people were suggesting they were raccoon paw prints. Here's a raccoon paw print. Listen, they do look very hand-like, and raccoon paws can get huge in adults. Like we've seen them before, and they look kind of like monster hands. They're pretty scary. But I would agree with you that those look more like human handprints to me. Just the way the palm is mostly. Like it looks like you could see this part of the palm in the door, and I just feel like with raccoon paw prints, they're flatter. I'm no raccoon expert though. And honestly, it wouldn't be inconceivable that this would be a human. I had a friend once who lived in a relatively safe neighborhood, but not a safe area. Like the area as a whole is a little sketch. And this is the cleanest woman I've ever met in my life. Super anal retentive clean, right? After her husband passed away, so she'd been living alone for a while, and she found handprints on one of her windows on the outside too. And she called the police, and the police were like, well, we can't do anything, but they'd just taken notes for all the activity that happens in that area because it was very clear that somebody was trying to open her window. It happens. If somebody, honestly, it could have been somebody trying to get in or trying to see if there was any way to open the door easily. And they were crouching down and putting their hands up to look to see if they can look into your house. That would not surprise me. Again, casing your house to see if it's worth going in or seeing if there's dogs or anything like that. So that's not inconceivable to me. That's what it looks like to me. And I am very, very sorry if that is what happened. Very creepy, but I'm glad that nothing else came out of it. All right, moving on. The next story is going to be a camp counselor story, and I'm so excited. I love camp stories. Okay. Hello there. Absolutely love your content. I've been a longtime fan and subscriber. Before I start, I just want to let you know that I've posted this happening only once before on Reddit, but it didn't gain much traction. So here we go. Thanks for all you do. And this is from Olivia, I think is how you say it. Olivia? That's a really pretty name. During my senior year in high school, 2020, I signed up once again to be a camp counselor for my school district's outdoor education camp. It's a few days where we take fifth graders out into the woods, stay in some cabins, and do outdoor fun/survival activities. The camp we take our kids to was well tucked away in the woods, and I think it used to be a church camp. The cabins are little A-frames that have a front and back door on opposing sides. Even when I was a camper myself in the 5th grade, though, there was a lot of rumors of the place having a haunted cabin. However, no one could ever agree on which specific cabin it was. Anyway, I had a cabin of 12 girls to take care of, and I had another counselor with me, but she wasn't all that interactive or helpful with the kids. And my girls all knew the stories of the haunted cabin and freaked out the first day after reading the carved out graffiti on the beds. It was mostly stupid stuff like Bloody Mary was here and will kill you. However, some were a little bit more unsettling, like Satan is watching you. These carvings had been there since I was their age, though, and I told them that everything was okay. They seemed more giggly/excited/ maybe a little spooked, but not scared. By nightfall, they were all over it and didn't say anything else about it. The first night went great. The second night, however, changed my mind on some of the stories. As it goes, by the end of the second day, all the kids were exhausted from the activities and everyone fell asleep very fast. At one point, I wake up to a banging noise. It must have been about 4 or 5 a.m., given the small bit of light from outside. I thought that the back door to the cabin had come open again. I had to block it from the outside on the first day because it kept opening from the wind. I opened my eyes and looked over at the end of my bunk to the door and saw the gray figure of an adult trying to pull the door open. It very clearly wasn't one of my girls. The gray silhouette was as tall as the bunk beds it was next to. My other counselor was asleep in the bed directly beside me. However, it continued banging on the door or trying to pull on it. After failing, I heard them walk to the front of the cabin and out. For some reason, in my sleepy state, I assumed that it was one of the teachers and didn't think much in the moment. In the morning, several of my girls said that they were woken up and asked who was trying to open the back door. I was surprised, but said that I woke up to that too, and that it was probably just a teacher who's assigned to check in on us. 2 of the girls that were close to the door insisted that it wasn't. The other counselor said that she was fast asleep and didn't see anything, of course. I calmed them down and got them excited for the day's activities. Now more worried, though, that someone came into our cabin, I hunted down our assigned teacher. I explained that I had blocked the back door due to the wind and apologized if she couldn't get out this morning. She didn't know what I was talking about, saying that she hadn't even tried the back door. I pressed a little more and asked if she was in the cabin at that point. She said she wasn't and that she was on monitor duty. Oh, I felt my stomach drop. I explained what happened and that several of my girls saw it too. She said no one else should have been in the cabin, especially another adult. Later, she asked around and confirmed that none of the other teachers or counselors had come in. She said that it was weird, but it was probably just a dream or that the girls were freaking themselves out. I know what I saw though, and I was royally freaked out. The rest of the time, there was pretty uneventful, but I still couldn't shake the creepy feeling and didn't sleep well after that night. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, Olivia, is what you said your name is. Thank you so much. Absolutely terrifying. More terrifying to me, though, is the prospect that it was a person. I do think that since the girl saw her and you saw her too, it definitely was something. But like, what if it wasn't a ghost? What if it really was just somebody trying to come in? Like, we've heard horror stories about that before. And what if it was just some creepy motherfucker creeping on young girls or just coming in to freak you out? I don't know. Or just intruding. Yeah, I don't like that. Then also reading back on the description, you didn't say it was like a woman or anything like that. So that also makes me think that if it was, it could be a man that was trying to get in. And that just kind of goes with the whole, like, was it somebody there being a creep? That's what I would be more scared of, which I'm sure you are. But like, oh, I don't like that. What a creepy story. If anybody wants to send in more of their camp counselor or just like their summer camp creepy stories, if they're like, if you have any good camp stories, I would love that because I love summer camp stories. Okay, and our last story for today starts, "Hello, Hannah. First of all, I love your content. I always listen to your videos when drawing, and you have a very soothing voice." Thank you. I've heard that. Some people say they like to fall asleep to my voice, and that's a huge compliment. That's so sweet. Okay, this is definitely very late, but when I saw your scary story videos, this memory came right back to me, and I felt like I needed to share it, even if it doesn't make it into any video. Have it as a treat. I would like to remain anonymous, if that's possible. I was born in Brazil, and when I was a child, I lived in a very small, old mountain town in the southeast of the country named Petrópolis. Petrópolis? I'm probably saying that wrong. I'm so sorry. Long story short, that town used to be the emperor's summer getaway because while Brazil's summers are hot and humid, that town in particular had better temperature all year round because it was located in the mountains amidst thick forest, making it humid but also quite cold. Inside the town, you have many museums and old imperial palaces from Brazil's monarchy days, as well as the town's cathedral. Now, because the town was so humid and cold, it was always very foggy in the evenings. Very, very foggy. I remember each time I got home from school, I'd look down my street to see the back of the bus. I'd go to school by a small school bus, and it would quickly disappear into the fog. The town is very lovely, but it has a lot of creepy things, though one always stuck to me. It happened when I was around 8 to 9 years old. Me and my mom would often visit the cathedral on the weekdays, mostly just as part of our after lunch walks because we lived nearby. The cathedral was very pretty, and while we weren't super religious, it felt nice to sit inside and listen to the chorus and them playing the big organ every now and then. The only issue I had with the cathedral, though, was its entrance. Basically, you'd enter through the big front doors, and to your right, you'd see a big chamber gated by a black iron cell, and inside that cell were 4 tombs. The tombs of the past emperor and his family lay to rest. On top of each tomb were sculptures done in ivory of each family member laying there as if they were asleep. Now, it is very beautiful, and the work done on the sculptures was truly amazing, but young me always found that rather creepy. That does sound really creepy, but also super pretty. I want to see. I eventually brushed off the fear of the cathedral the best I could, but one night the town was going to do a Light and Shadows show at the Imperial Museum, and me and my family went there to watch. It was a warm early summer night, so it wasn't raining, but it was very much humid and foggy. Basically, we were all sitting outside of the museum, and the curtains of its windows were closed, and we'd only seen the shadow and the silhouettes of the actors as the narrator's voice echoed through the hidden speaker. I don't remember what story was being played exactly, but usually it was a retelling of monarchy events and other stuff about the imperial family. The show itself was very simple and pretty cool, and after it ended, we'd walk back home. I lived in an apartment building next to the river that crossed the town, and to get there, we had to pass by the cathedral, which was closed during the nights, but its tower was always lit up by strobe lights at its base, which again should be very pretty. But it was foggy. It wasn't pretty. It was horrifying. I couldn't see the cathedral very well from where we were walking, save for the dark cavity that was its entrance and its vague, big silhouette. But I'd look up and see that very tall, blurred pillar of light. And because our townsfolk were watching the show too, we'd occasionally see the shadows of people here and there, walking with some distant chatting voices around us. It almost felt like the show wasn't over yet because you'd hear these disembodied voices and see shadows walking around and around still. Then we'd stop for a second because my dad had to tie up his boots, and for some reason I felt the need to turn around and look at the cathedral even though I was afraid of it. I just felt like I had to look. The doors were closed and it was past 6, so the bells weren't ringing anymore, so it was just standing there in the fog, mostly in the dark, save for the tower. I did see, however, the silhouette of someone going up the front staircase, which was odd because, again, the cathedral was closed. It seemed like either a girl with a pale dress or a person with a long coat, but the fog made it too hard to discern, and no way in hell was I going to step closer to check. I asked my mom about it, and she brushed it off as, it's probably one of the nuns. Some of them probably work during the night. Before I could contest it, though, my dad finished tying his boots, and we walked back home, though the memory of that person on the staircase stuck to me. It wasn't until the next weekend afternoon where me and my mom went to the cathedral again, and I noticed how none of the priests, nuns, or staffs of the cathedral wore white. They all wore black or brown robes. As for the emperor, he did have a daughter, and the ivory sculpture of her tomb wore a very pretty long dress. I want to think that I just saw some tourists going up the stairs to take photos, but it was 2008 or 2009, so the phones were still kind of potatoes, and most regular cameras couldn't really capture any reasonable image at night without the flash and selfies that weren't really a thing either. As far as I can remember, that quote person at the staircase was alone as well. I guess the emperor's daughter was taking a night stroll. Who knows? The memory sends a chill down my spine even now. If you want to Google the cathedral, its name is the Cathedral of St. Peter of Alcantara. I'm so sorry, I can't say anything right or say anything. I don't know how to pronounce things. And that was from Anonymous. Okay, I'm gonna look up the cathedral. Wow. Okay, I could see the steps. I could see I could see how that's creepy but beautiful. Oh my gosh. I want to look up the tomb. Oh, I see what you mean. Here's a picture of the tomb where their statues are like laying on top like they're asleep. Oh my gosh. Beautiful though. Thank you so much for sharing that story with us. Yeah, maybe you saw a ghost. Maybe it was, like you said, maybe it was the emperor's daughter, is what I would like to think, that you saw something. Like you said, I feel like if it was tourists taking pictures, you probably would have seen somebody else with them. The only skepticism I would have is that because it's foggy all the time, it would be hard to really, really see exactly what you saw. And since you didn't look at it for very long, I'd be curious to know, like, if you had looked at it for longer, would other people have appeared? Would you have seen that it was just a person? But if you got the like vibe that it was a ghost, then maybe you saw a ghost. I mean, like, cathedrals are definitely one of those places that if hauntings exist, if ghosts exist, cathedrals are probably haunted. So yeah, thank you again so much for sharing that story with me. I loved it. Beautiful. Okay. That's going to be it for today. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you're not already and you like videos like this and you want to hear more in the future. And I will see you all tomorrow. Thanks for being here. Okay, bye.